Welcome to the Wayfaring Panda. I'm Annette. Today I'm participating in a YouTube hop put on by Joanne Bartel called Simple Stories Saturdays, and it's just where we use Simple Stories products to scrapbook our photos. So I'm starting off with a piece of 12 by 12 mixed media paper, and I'm doing some stenciling using a Simple Stories stencil simply called Net because it looks like a fishing net. And then I'm using Tumbled glass distress ink. I'm building up the ink in 3 different areas on my layout so that I can build some clusters that will form a visual triangle. I splattered some water on with a fan brush and dab it up with a paper towel, and it forms some bubbles to make it look more like it's under the sea and give the layout some texture. I used my Creative Memories 12-inch decorative trimmer to cut out this piece of Simple Stories paper, and it's called Beach Vibes from the Simple Vintage Seas collection. And this one's older, so I don't know that it's around anywhere anymore, although they do put nautical ones out from time to time, so you might find something similar. And then I'm going around the edges of that with my Unchartered Mariner Distress ink. Then I got a piece of paper that's from the same collection called 4x6 Elements, and I'm using the B side, which looks like netting. I'm just holding up my other paper to see how large to cut it because I want this one to be a little bit larger. Also, I'm trying to decide if I want to cut it with the exact same scallop patterns or make it a little bit offset. I haven't used this trimmer very much, so I wasn't exactly sure how to utilize it, but I decided instead of putting it on the side where the longer ruler is and cutting it, if I put it the other way, I would get an offset of it. So that's what I decided to do. Although I didn't take into account how far away it's going to cut, so I did waste a little bit of paper. I liked how the offset looked, and I intended to do that again on the bottom because it kind of looks like layered waves, but I fed it in going towards the ruler as opposed to away from it, so then I ended up getting the waves to match up with the original piece of paper. But I did use that original piece of paper to figure out how large to cut it, and I was happy with that. Then I inked around the edges with the Uncharted Mariner, and it turned out, I'm glad I made the mistake because I kind of like how it turned out, because if it looked like waves on the top and bottom, waves really don't make sense on the bottom of the ocean, so I'm actually glad that I left more of a scallop looking border. And plus, when you put it in your photo album, no one's going to know how you intended to do it as long as it looks good. I'm going to stencil on some of these seashells into the areas where I was going to build the clusters. I originally was going to use the opaque texture paste, but it was completely dried out, so I opened this jar, which is translucent, and I decided that would be good because actually shells sometimes have a translucent quality to them. Plus then you can also see the texture of the water and net beneath it. Now the other thing is I don't really buy colored paste anymore because I end up not using up my paste before it gets dried up, so I just get either the clear or the opaque so that I can just add ink to it and make it my own color. Now this time I didn't really have the color I wanted. I was kind of looking at that kind of reddish brown that they have on the seashells on one of the papers I used, and I didn't really have a reddish brown, so I'm mixing the fire brick, which is kind of a darker red and has kind of a look of brown, but not really. So then I'm adding tea dye. I might have been able to use something like the photo one, but I was afraid with it being dark that it would be too dark. But I ended up using a lot of the tea dye to try to get it a little bit of a brownish red. And I think it did end up matching pretty good. So once I get that done, then I stencil on the seahorse in the top right hand corner, and then I do some other seashells in the other corners. The stencil I'm using is called Marine Life, and it's from KaiserCraft. I got this quite a long time ago, so I don't know if that's out there anymore or even if KaiserCraft is out there. I actually found this at a small scrapbooking store in Maine. I like to go to scrapbooking stores when I travel so that I can find papers and embellishments that go along with the area that I'm visiting. I also like supporting small stores when I travel so that you're supporting family-owned businesses. Now, this is the only stencil I think I have from KaiserCraft, and I really like the texture of it. It's really smooth, and even though it has a lot of these small lines, it doesn't have like the harsh edges that you sometimes have on the stencils. I did wash off the stencil each time I finish one of the animals so that I don't accidentally get the paste somewhere where I don't want it. Now, this paste you can wash off really easy, but you don't want it to dry hard on your glass mat or it will be hard to clean off. I let the layout dry overnight, and then I also matted my photos while it was drying. Now that it's the next day and everything's dried, I'm coming back and gluing on the paper that I cut out already with some Nouveau Deluxe glue. I'll put a list of all the products that I'm using in the description below. Some of these will be affiliate links. They don't cost you anything extra to use, but I do get a small commission from any sales that the links generate, and that helps support my channel. I matted my photos with some navy cardstock, and I'm attaching them with some mounting squares, or sometimes they're called photo squares. These photos I took on my trip in 2005 when my sister and I went to Disneyland, and then we took a day where we went on a tour of Los Angeles, and they stopped at Marina del Rey. And the photo is of my sister. I'm rarely in the photos because my sister really doesn't take many photos. I'm adding my title, Marina del Rey, with some Creative Memories alphabet stickers, and these are a navy color. I don't know if they make these particular ones anymore because mine are very old. I got a lot of my stuff from Creative Memories in the late 90s and early 2000s when my aunt was a demonstrator. I'm using a quilting ruler as well as the lines on my glass mat to help me keep my letters straight, although I'm sure they're still crooked because I can't get anything on completely straight. As I mentioned earlier, this is part of a YouTube hop. We do have a playlist, so I'll put the playlist in the description below as well as at the end of the video so you can click on that and hop along and check everyone out. There's also a playlist of all the different channels that usually participate, so I'll put that in the description also, although not every channel participates every month. Then I start going through all my Simple Stories bits that I have from this collection. I have the little bits that are on top that are called Nautical bits, which are also from the Simple Vintage Seas collection, as well as the Decorative brads. And then I also have the sticker sheet that came with the collection. I keep trying out different pieces to see what I like. Sometimes I don't like the color, or perhaps the size just isn't quite right. And then I tried to do the same thing on the right hand side as I did the left. And on the bottom I built up a cluster kind of on the bottom left and more on the top right. This part is kind of the funner part of scrapbooking, but it's also the more challenging part for me because I always have trouble deciding what to put there and really knowing how to build clusters, but I do end up liking how it turned out. As a final embellishment, I add some pops of color. I start with gloss royal blue, and then I add my favorite one, which is called pearl satin. I really like all the ones that are pearl color. If you're not familiar with pops of color, it comes from scrapbook.com, and the gloss ones and pearl ones are kind of like the Nouveau enamel dots or jewels, that kind of thing. And they do have some glitter ones, which would be like stickles. I add most of them in groups of 3, and then I also added some up above the seahorse to look like it's bubbles coming out of his nose. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a like. And if you're not already a subscriber, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.